go take a gander. I want to do the Choy one where he talks about how Windows needs to be. Apparently, there's a Choy video where he talks about the secret meta Survivor and how Windows. Apparently he goes for windows of opportunity, which I think is a very interesting take. That is an interesting take, and I really want to see what's up. I really want to see what he means by like Windows. Windows might potentially be a problem. So yeah, let's see what the validity of that is, because that's certainly something if he does say that.
You are looking at the top 10 Survivor meta perks in the game right now, and you might be surprised to see some of these perks on the list. So in this video, we're going to go over these perks, we'll discuss why they're being used as much as they are, we'll compare them to the top 10 Survivor meta perks prior to the big meta shift update, which we'll be referring to as the MSU for the rest of the video, and of course whether or not these perks need changed in any way. Also, before you foam out the mouth, we will be doing the same thing with the killer meta perks in the next video. In general, DBD players are way too addicted to meta amphetamines. Lastly, anytime I talk about balance changes in DBD, I'm not talking about them inside of a bubble. The game needs a million different changes for both sides. So please keep that in mind. Whataboutism is not helpful when discussing balance. It's pretty much a brick wall. So the #1 Survivor perk in the game is still Dead Hard. However, it dropped from a mouth-watering 50% usage rate down to a cheek cleanse.
That's why you know that they like this. The people think that new Dead Hard's better. It's clearly a worse version. It is. And you see that reflected in the amount of people running it. It is a worse version of the perk. In certain circumstances, yes, it is better. In certain circumstances, it is better. But for the most part, it's a nerfed version of the perk. It really is. So, like, yeah.
Clenching 30% usage rate. The most obvious thing that sticks out about this is that Live and Sprint Burst are now both in the top 10 Survivor meta.
Yep. The get away from me meta. The get away from me meta. That's what that's the meta we are in now. Is the get away from me meta. That's why they're up here. It's like, no, don't touch me. Which is why I think it's like, we're like, the more, like, I wish Dead Hard could be worked in a way that it didn't feel so cheap, because it is a chase perk. It is a chase perk. I want this to be reworked to be a chase perk that feels fair, because this is what's looming on the horizon. Like, you guys think we have it bad now? Wait till everybody is running these two. Wait till everybody's only running the get away from me perks. You're gonna be sad. You're gonna be really sad. When everybody is like, anytime you try to pressure anybody on a gen, anytime you try to like chase with somebody, they just run away from you instead. You're gonna feel the pain of what it's like to not have a chase perk be the most meta thing. You're gonna feel the pain. You really are. You've probably run into gamers like this that greed the gen the last second and then sprint burst away. It's the most frustrating thing in the universe. And you want that? You're gonna urge these two towards #1. That's what you're gonna do.
Perks, which prior to the MSU they were not. So essentially, the 20% of Dead Hard users who were no longer getting value out of the perk swapped it for another.
Because it's not free value anymore. I look at me now. I hate you if you say that. I hate you. I hate you if you say that. Dead Hard is not free value anymore. It is in certain circumstances, like at pallets, good example. Free value, because either you drop the pallet, you get the stun, or you Dead Hard and then they hit your Dead Hard, right? There are certain circumstances where it is a free escape. Yes, especially against certain killers like Huntress, like Demo, like anybody like even Wesker, where you have those like long range hits that you got to get last second. Yes, the Dead Hard can still be free there, 100%. To say every Dead Hard is a free escape and the perk fundamentally is a free escape, you're lying. You're allowed to hate the perk. You're allowed to hate the perk. That's fine. But you're lying if you say that. You're lying if you say it. Old Dead Hard was. Old Dead Hard was. When you had that invincibility and that distance, you were making all kinds of pallets, windows, anything that you needed that you just weren't going to make before. But that's not how the perk is now. So I hate that take. I hate that take so much.
exhaustion perk. Not very surprising at all. That said, a lot of you are going to be scratching your head at why so many survivors, almost exclusively in the top MMR bracket, are still using Dead Hard. But the answer is pretty simple. They're all cheating. Literally every single Dead Hard user is a hacker. I'm kidding. Only a few.
Like, wait a minute.
So I'll explain why for real. The perk has an insanely high skill ceiling. If a survivor is a really good looper, they can turn what most players would consider bad or weak loops into nightmare fuel for the killer. All they have to do is run the loop as tight as possible. If they see the killer lunge, they activate Dead Hard, boom, they get a free sprint burst. And if the killer tries to bait it out, they'll almost certainly get pallet stunned. Put simply, in the right hands against the right killers, it creates lose-lose situations
like
with
I said,
absolutely
Huntress,
no
Demo,
counterplay.
Wesker,
Waiting it out is literally not a choice in these situations.
You know what's ironic about this? You know what's funny? M1 killers deal with new Dead Hard more than anybody else. Because waiting out Dead Hard is super easy with an M1 killer, because you just wait. like you're not getting a hatchet last second around a corner, you're not hitting a last second curve with like Billy, or like, you know, sniping somebody from really far away with 2 Wesker bounds. M1 killers just wait a second and down you. It's such a bizarre world that I would not have foreseen a year ago. Is that, like, for some reason M1 killers just have a way better time with this perk than anybody else? Like, okay. what a weird world to live in. It's just interesting.
The more survivors start to pick up on this, the more of them will start to switch back to Dead Hard. Also, if you truly believe Dead Hard is a bad perk now, please explain why it's still the most used survivor perk in the game. And
it's not bad.
Why you even...
It's not bad. Not bad. I think people over-exaggerate its strength. I think people still think this perk is like S tier, right? I would say it's like A+. You know? I feel like it's like A+, right? I don't feel like it's S tier anymore. I feel like light, not even light. Sprint burst, way better. Way better. No reason you shouldn't be using sprint burst over new Dead Hard, in my opinion. If you can learn how to 99 that, there's no reason you should be using new Dead Hard over sprint burst at all. At all. No reason. I think Dead Hard is, like, really, really good. Still A+, but I don't think it's S tier anymore.
Care if it's nerfed again. If it's the biggest complaint killers have and you truly believe it's a worthless perk, then it really shouldn't be something to worry about, right? Now, the new Dead Hard is way more fair than the old Dead Hard, just so we're on the same page. That said, there were also buffs to the new Dead Hard that don't get talked about much. The new Dead Hard has no angle requirement. The survivor has full range of motion at all times. The old Dead Hard sent survivors straight forward. Also, when Behavior was attempting to correct survivors getting hit through dropped pallets, they for whatever reason increased the hitbox size of pallets by about half a meter in both directions, creating vacuum pallets from hell.
Is that why? I've been telling you guys that it felt like I'm being hit from way far away. Is that why? Oh, that makes sense. That's why that's been happening. Wow.
So when Behavior was attempting to correct survivors getting hit through dropped pallets, they for whatever reason increased the hitbox size of pallets by about half a meter in both directions, creating vacuum.
Remember that Zarina the other day at Fun Bus on Autohaven, where she literally dropped it from like a meter away and hit me, and I was like, what is that? Huh.
Pallets from hell. As Survivor even, you may have noticed instances where you're getting sucked to the wrong side of the pallet because the hitbox is so enormous that the game sometimes doesn't even understand what side of the pallet you're closest to.
Yep.
Now, tryhard survivors have repurposed this to run out past a pallet, but then vacuum back to it for a stun. It's difficult to play around for killer.
Yeah,
it makes
and to be fair, that's been in the game for a while, right? Like, they took it out for a little bit, but like, that has existed for most of Dead by Daylight's like history. That's not really new. Vacuum pallets used to be way more awful, to be fair. So like, this is like not something new, really. So you should pretty much be used to this unless you're a brand new player. But yeah, that's not like, that shouldn't be crazy news to you guys that have played
stronger, and it punishes killers with good connections the most. Sag. Now, if your opinion is that
how many times have I said, man, I wish I played on bad internet? Like, how many times have you guys heard me say, I wish I had bad internet in certain scenarios? It's because of stuff like that. Because little stuff like that does help you if you have bad internet. Like, I'm not, like, it's a joke, Like, I don't actually want bad internet so I can get those hits, but like, on the back end, yeah, it would actually help me. It literally would actually help me.
Art is perfectly fine now, I do understand, but regardless of what side you play in DBD, Survivor, Killer, or both, playing against the same perks every game is very boring, plus rolling your eyes chronically can lead to severe cases of permacringe. So before I say how I would change Dead Hard, make sure to watch Balance for Grass Touchers to understand the broader picture on the balance issues. And
that video did not do well for me. I reacted to this video. You guys did not like that I disagreed with a lot of the things he said. Maybe not you guys on the Twitch, but you guys on the YouTube, you were like, oh my god, I can't believe he disagreed with all that.
DBD. Alright, so for Dead Hard, I would keep it how it is right now. You could attempt to use it over and over again in a match as many times as possible. However, once it actually worked, the killer hits you with it and you sprint burst away, at that point, it would permanently disable for the rest of the trial, sort of like Decisive Strike. The perk is strong enough that this would not kill it. I'm not even sure if it would drastically decrease its usage rates. Again, this is because the survivors that use Dead Hard right still understand the high level of value it has.
I think Dead Hard is fundamentally a poorly designed perk. I'm just gonna say it, like despite here's another thing. I have personal feelings about this perk, and I'm setting them aside to tell you this because I'm just telling you what I perceive based on my experience in the game. I have personal feelings about this perk. It's always in my build whenever I play. I don't think this perk works as a perk. I think there's no way to nerf it without destroying it, and there's no way to buff it without making it obnoxious. It just, what it does fundamentally sucks. If you, obviously, we've experienced a buffed version of this perk, which was true invincibility and distance, right? That sucked. We brought it down a little bit. It's way more manageable, not as overpowered. Still, like, one of the best perks in the game. Not S tier, but still, like, probably top 10 perks in the game. If you nerf this perk any more than it's already nerfed, it doesn't function. I think that's, like, some, you know, obviously, if you're a killer man, you're like, hell yeah, break it. But, like, you know, obviously on the survivor side, you're like, okay, well, that's an A tier perk that I can't use anymore. And that's part of what Mint Skull was talking about last video, was like, that's part of that's a whole, like, perk variety thing gone out the window. Right? If you nerf this perk any more than it already is, it just stops functioning. It will be another one of, like, the 100 perks that just sit there and do nothing. So, yeah, you're kind of in a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation with this. If you buff it, it's too strong. If you nerf it at all, it becomes useless. Basically, if we can't, like, if we can't handle current Dead Hard, it's either gonna just, you're just gonna stay the way it is and be miserable, or they're gonna nerf it, which is probably what's gonna happen because, you know, everybody's complaining about it again, and Otts made the video about, or not the video, but the post about it, so now everybody in the community is hive minding around that. It's just gonna be useless. You know? It's just gonna be useless. Like, I can't even think of a single nerf that I could do to this perk that would make it not suck. Even what he's suggesting right now sucks. You know, and depending on how you feel about that, like, you know, survivors obviously be like, no, don't do it. And then killer's like, oh yeah, do it, you know? There's nothing you can do to this perk that would nerf it in a way that would make it fair. Without making it, like, you know, not wanting to be used, so. That's just how I feel. It's just like, I think it's just a problematic perk, just with its effect. I think this is the best version of it that has existed, and I am dreading the oncoming nerf where it just becomes another one of the 100 perks where it doesn't exist anymore. You know, if you can't, TLDR, if you can't deal with it the way it is now, we just can't have it in the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can't handle current Dead Hard in the game, it just needs to not be in the game. Because this is probably the most fair this perk is going to get. So, yeah.
This would also encourage more exhaustion combos like Dead Hard with Smash Hit and Dead Hard with Head On. Lastly, I would make it to where Dead Hard would not protect you from a hit that would insta-down you. So if you were a tier 3 Myers, it would still down you even if
this confused me when I first started playing the game and I was running into Dead Hard. This would confuse me with like endurance effects and period. Like when I was first starting to play the game. It was like, if I hit you for 2 health states, theoretically, and you have endurance, I still hit you for 2 health states, right? No, endurance just is a tank. It's like a get down Mr. President effect. It doesn't work that way. Endurance just happens, no matter how many health states you delivered. When I was first starting to play the game and I was trying to understand endurance, I was like, okay, well, if I play Myers or Bubba and I hit somebody who has an endurance effect applied to them from like BT, I down them, right? It's like, no, they just get the endurance. It's like, what? But I did 2 health states to them. It's like, well, it doesn't work that way. Which is weird. So, yeah, it's kind of harkening back to my confusion with that when I was a new player.
If you get hit with a chainsaw, you cannot just clench your cheeks and get through it. I think it's a bit silly. So anytime a survivor gets hit by something that would put them in the dying state from being healthy, it essentially would bypass Dead Hard if they were injured and Dead Hard through it. This is really the final form of Dead Hard, in my opinion.
That's how it works. Yeah, me
now
too.
Let's move on to the second most used survivor perk, Windows of Opportunity, which has seen over a 10% rise in usage since the MSU, sitting at 26%. And to be honest, this perk is a bigger problem than any other survivor perk in the game by a mile, in my opinion. It was essentially designed to be a training mechanic for new players, but it has been repurposed as an autopilot mechanic for sweatlords. Also, make no mistake, I have Windows of Opportunity tattooed on my arse. It is such an amazing perk to run tiles optimally and never run into dead zones. For those who don't know, Windows originally had a 28-meter radius and a 20-second cooldown every time a survivor vaulted or dropped a pallet in a chase. Yet even back then, the original perk was still really good, it just didn't play the game for you like it does right now. The killer equivalent...
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with this at all. You can still play a pallet wrong just because you know where it is. I understand you're not running into dead zones as much when you're running this, but you can still play a pallet wrong. I don't agree with that. You can totally still play a pallet wrong just because you know where it is. He thinks this is the most problematic perk in the game that plays the game for you. Really interesting. I completely disagree in every way. And I don't even run this perk. I have no personal bias towards this perk. I have never looked at somebody's build and said, oh, Windows of Opportunity, I guess they were just playing, let the perks play the game for you. I have never once thought that. Literally ever. He's thinking, yeah, literally, Zeus. This is like DBD dev thinking. Like, high percentile use means it must be nerfed. Seeing a setup does not... There are plenty of setups that are really bonkers in DBD that I see people play wrong all the time. And I'll check their pages afterwards, and they have thousands of hours. like they'll have like, hold on. Let's see if I have this. Let's see if I still have this from my video where I showed you guys how I showed people how to like loop, like show people how to like shorthandedly loop. Let's see if I still have this file. Yes, I do. This is something I made. This is a little diagram of, this is the backside of Father Campbell's or the Asylum. You know how sometimes the shack right here will spawn with a tile, like right here, it almost always does. And it's always connected. This is what I displayed here. So like the red dot is the killer and the blue dot is the survivor, right? Let's say like they meet organically, right? Let's say they meet organically. And like they were kind of near the window here and the killer just spots them. Survivor vaults window. I'll see so many people, like even though this is a busted setup, this is an incredibly strong setup, probably won't stay in the game too long. They'll like, for some reason they'll vault this and then run this way. And then the killer will just like catch up and like catch them at the window. Obviously, the smart play here, if they vault that window, is to go towards the shack tile. And if the killer tries to cut them off here, come back through. And if they try to come off here, go and vault this and chain the tile, right? It's a busted setup. But so many people will do the dumb thing and be like, I'm going to run this way. And then the killer's just like, okay, well, I follow you. And no matter what they do, they get hit because they don't know how to utilize the setup. Windows of Opportunity would show them the window, the pallet, that window, that pallet. But they can run it completely wrong. I get so many hits on survivors doing this that have thousands and thousands of hours. Should theoretically know better. Should theoretically know better. How does Windows play the game for you, my dude? Hello? How does Windows play the game for you? Oh my god. This is a take.
Equivalent of windows of opportunity would be like if surveillance activated every time a survivor touched a gen with absolutely no other requirement. So anytime the devs are making a perk like windows that is intended to help new players get into the game, they have to make sure they're not unintentionally creating a tryhard weapon of mass destruction.
You really think this about window? I am in Bizarro World. I am straight up confused. Like, usually I can kind of see kind of like, you know, I can usually kind of see some sort of like, well, it's an exaggerated take, but I understand where it's coming from. This one, I'm like, homie, hello? I play against Windows. I played against Windows gamers yesterday. Holy moly. I play against Windows players every time I play Killer. I have never once looked at their perks and went, God, that was kind of because of Windows. Never, ever. People who I play who have Windows die all the time and super easily. Some don't. Some use it really well. Some die. This is concerningly baffling. I agree. Hello? Like, I legitimately, I'm not trying to be contrarian. I am not trying to disagree with him on purpose to be like, a pick me Andy. It's telling you, with somebody with 4,000 hours, almost most of those on Killer, I have never, ever once looked at Windows and went, that is the reason I lost. Ever. Literally ever. He must be in some insane MMR that I have never touched, where everybody's running Windows all the time and he's getting stopped exclusively by people who run Windows. Because outside of that weird scenario, I have no idea how he came to this conclusion. Like, literally zero. And once again, I'll phrase this again. I don't use Windows as Survivor at all. I have no bias towards this perk whatsoever. Zero. I have no love for it. I have no hate for it. I don't care. Like, it just kind of happens. It just kind of exists. If Windows is so game breaking, then blindness add-on should be really strong, right? Maybe, I don't know. At this point, maybe he thinks that. I don't know. It's a good perk, but it's not a perk. Yeah, I always thought like Windows, in my opinion, was just like a nice little like B plus A minus perk. It was nice. And like you said, it does help you avoid dead zones. That I agree with. That's like the reason you run Windows. Is because if you're not in a Swift, you don't know who's dropped what where. There's plenty of times I'll run into a town and go, ah, crap, this is already gone. I'm just dead here, right? Windows essentially circumvents that, right? You just go, okay, well, nothing was over there. But even then, sometimes you, based on where the killer is chasing you, you have no option besides to run at the tile that has nothing in it, right? It doesn't play the game for you. Like, this is a take. This is a weird take. And he's, like you said, like, I've seen him on Twitter. This is how I first found out about this video, is like, he is all about this take. He thinks he's like hit the gold mine. He's diagnosed the disease that is killing Dead by Daylight. Like, wow. That is.
For what I would do to fix Windows is simply revert it back to what it was. It was still a great perk, and survivors could run it with open-handed to get a little bit of extra value for a fair price, but as it is right now, it honestly looks like something you would see on the front page of a website selling hacks for the game. In third place, we have Adrenaline, which has gone from about a 12% usage rate up to 21%. So another really big spike, and it's not really surprising why. Look at the list of things that this single perk does for a survivor. That said, I don't see any issue with Adrenaline itself. It's an endgame perk, it's a wager, and I don't have any direct problem with the perk staying exactly.
Yeah, Addy is a reward for winning. Like, if you have gotten to this point where all 5 gens have gone, you have pretty much lost the game. Killer games mostly end at like 2 or 1 gens. Like, on average. Like, killer games usually end at 1 or 2 gens. Because that's when killers start really kicking it into high gear and they go, okay, I'm kind of losing. I need to do stuff like camp tunnel or like proxy or do stuff. Throw them in the basement. They start using their catch-up tactics, right, around 1 or 2 gens. So most games ideally end for killer around 1 or 2 gens. If you have hit 0 gens, you didn't kick it into high gear when you started noticing that the game was going downhill, right? If you got to a point where you didn't notice the game was going downhill and you let that happen, it doesn't feel too unfair that they get an extra reward for, you not pressuring them enough. No, I'm not saying that's the only reason you lose games, but, like, that's a big majority of it, right?
how it is. However, what I would actually do is buff Terminus. This is a Wesker perk that inflicts injured survivors with the broken status effect when the exit gates are powered. So it's essentially a built-in counter to Adrenaline, except it doesn't stop survivors from getting a sprint burst or healing from the dying state. Healing from the dying state is fine, but the exhaustion part isn't. So Terminus should now also inflict survivors with exhaustion to further counter Adrenaline. That seems like the most fair option, and Hope is always available as an alternative. Up next is Boom Circle of Healing at 20%, up from about 12%
I still don't think
before
Addy's
the
a problem
MSU.
at all.
Now, anytime there's a conversation about nerfing Circle of Healing, people suggest that Shattered Hope should become base kit.
Circle of Healing is the same way. You know, I talked about Dead Hard. Circle of Healing is the same way. The effect is the problem, so if you keep nerfing it, it's just gonna, like, you're gonna end up just putting it in a point where it's just pointless. But if you buff it, like it's already been in a stronger place, it's just kind of like, it just doesn't really work as a perk in the game, you know? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like if you keep nerfing this perk, it's just gonna end up shitty, and nobody's ever gonna want to run that, and it'll just be another one of the perks in the pile that you never use. But obviously we've seen it in its more buff form, so like, can't have that being good either. So it's like, yeah. Game winning if it's strong, but pointless if it's weak. Yep. It's in the same boat with Dead Hard. So, yeah.
Problem with that is even though it's a fair nerf to Circle of Healing, it basically ruins every other boon perk. So the way I see it, Circle of Healing has two futures. Either it keeps getting nerfed over and over again until the healing values are so low that self-care is actually a better option, or the Circle of Healing boon totem exclusively can be destroyed by the killer. This gets around issues like on Ironworks of Misery, where survivors will keep the top story of the building booned the entire game and the killer doesn't have enough time to go up and snuff it, and it's a fair nerf to Circle of Healing without destroying every other boon. Also, it will encourage survivors to run boons without Circle of Healing, because if Circle of Healing is a part of the boon, it can now be destroyed. But if the boon is just Shadow Step, then the killer would still need Shattered Hope to destroy it. As a result of this change, though, Shattered Hope would need a buff where you could see the location of boon totems once they were created. That would keep it used and further indirectly nerf Circle of Healing, which is really the only reason anyone would run Shattered Hope in the first place. In at number 5 is Prove Thyself with a 20% pick rate, up from 10%.
How has Prove existed in this game this long? Like, I'm being straight up. How has Prove existed in this game as long as it has? It's literally free gen pressure. For no drawback whatsoever. None. Zero. How has Proof been in the game this long? Like, legitimately. This was like, this is the dark horse, in my opinion. This is the elephant in the room we have never touched, we have never addressed. We've always known this perk's stupid and busted, and they never touch it, ever. Why is there just a free gen pressure perk? Why? I know Scott was like, oh well, technically you have to gang up on gens, which is less efficient. I really don't care. I've already made a whole video about how I feel about that, where he's like, oh, well, technically, it's like, you know, I don't know why I'm using this voice for him, but he said, oh, well, Proof's not that good. It's like, no, well, like, Proof is really good. It's free gen pressure for no reason. For literally no reason. And yes, it is more optimal to spread out at the beginning of a match, but after the first 2 or 3 gens, it's definitely more optimal to team up on gens. Way more optimal. How is Proof in the game? This perk's stupid.
Prove Thyself is an incredibly frustrating perk to play against, so I'm gonna stick with my rework idea from earlier this year. When a survivor dies, Prove Thyself activates for the remainder of the trial. For each generator left, the remaining survivors each gain a 10% increase to gen repair speed, up to a maximum of 50%. Only one Prove Thyself can be active at a time. So not that you get confused with the 50% number and your head explodes, so let me give you an example. A survivor disconnects when there's still 5 gens left at the very beginning of the game. All 3 remaining survivors gain a 50% generator repair speed. Once a gen is completed, the effect goes down to 40%. 3 gens left, 30%. 2 gens, 20%. 1 gen left, 10%. Essentially, depending on how quickly the survivors lose a teammate, the more help they get, but only to the point that the pacing of the match isn't completely ruined for either side. The survivors get a lot of help towards the start and only a tiny bit towards the end. It seems fair and keeps the 3v1 matches alive and not in an internal limbo of borathon for everyone involved just because one player either died instantly or BC'd
I'd have to think about that more, but it sounds on the surface like that.
The next two perks are Lithe, which is used about 18% of the time, and Sprint Burst at 14%. Neither of these perks were in the top 10 slot earlier this year. Nothing drastic really needs to be done here, but upping the exhaustion cooldown from 40 seconds to 60 seconds would be a good place to start. It would make Vigil a little more appealing than it is now, which is cool, and 40 seconds is just really too short for such an insanely powerful survivor ability. Don't forget we live in a world where Oppression still has an 80-second cooldown. Up next is Resilience at a 12% usage rate. Now personally, I don't see an issue with this perk or its pick rate, but if I had to change something about it, I would make it to where equipping this perk would always inflict the survivor with hemorrhage anytime they were injured.
Is Resilience a problem? Does anybody hate Resilience? That's another one of those perks I've never looked at and went, that needs changed. Ever. Even when I was a killer main. Like, exclusively. I've never looked at Resilience and went, that's stupid. I hate Resilience. If I had to change it, okay. We definitely shouldn't change it. Resilience is fine.
Basically means they would no longer be able to 99% a heal for extra gen progress and then full heal the second.
Yeah, it's a risk, right? Like, you're taking a buff to your injured state, but you're playing one shot the entire time, right? It's a trade-off. The trade-off is very measurable. It's like you're playing one shot, but you do everything slightly faster, you know? It's a play style, you know what I'm saying? It's not a free pressure like prove is. Like, prove thyself. It's a trade-off. It's like I'll play one shot, but like I do everything a little bit faster. Yeah.
Killer shows up to chase them, which makes the perk serve its intended purpose, while also making perks like Overzealous a little bit more appealing. Again though, the perk is really not an issue at the moment in my opinion. Then we have Off the Record at about a 12% usage rate, and the crazy thing is that it used to be at 0.27%.
Yep, because it
was one of the most worthless perks in the entire game.
Yep.
Now the new Off the Record does need a few small changes though, as it is a bit problematic for both sides. To start, survivors should no longer be silent with this perk for one major reason. Survivors who don't have Off the Record are not silent, and because of that, killers know when they can tunnel and when they can't. One of the strongest aspects of the old Decisive Strike was that killers were scared to sink time into chasing a survivor who might have invulnerability. That protected both survivors who had Decisive Strike and survivors who didn't have it. So in a weird way, the perk would be more anti-tunnel if survivors weren't silent. However, to combat survivors using Off the Record to body block, survivors with Off the Record, base kit BT, or endurance would no longer have collision with the killer. The killer could still hit them if they wanted to, it's just that if the killer doesn't want to hit them, they can now walk through them like a demanifested Sadako. Keep in mind, if a killer isn't tunneling, but a survivor uses Off the Record to body block for another teammate, they are basically encouraging the killer to tunnel at that point because it's the most optimal thing to do. So both changes to this perk would result in less tunneling overall.
I'm gonna be honest. Usually I don't hear that people are silent with Off the Record because the music's too loud. Like, the chase music's too loud, so I don't hear them silent. Because like sometimes the chase music's so loud that I can't even hear their normal noises. Like imagine like Zarina, right? Because Zarina was injured. You know, it's like even that, like I can't hear over the, like I'm playing Nemesis. It's like, bro, I can't hear. like. Yeah.
Very last spot we have Kindred, used 11% of the time, and it was not in the top 10 before the MSU. That said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Kindred. It's a very healthy perk and makes the game better overall. Also, with the Survivor icon update coming out, I'm very confident Kindred will be used less anyway. I'd much prefer to see changes to perks like Built to Last, Streetwise, and Hyperfocus, as they are incredibly slept on at the moment, if or when survivors—
Hyperfocus, I see Hyperfocus so much. I use Hyperfocus. Hyperfocus is a really, really good perk. Very, very... Because this is free gen pressure. It's not free, you got the integrate skill check, but most people that play the game moderately a lot will hit at least three greats on a gen. For free! For free. Yeah. Hyperfocus is really good. And it counts for every bar, too. Every bar you can hit a great skill check, healing, stuff like that. Faster. Like, you do have to hit great skill checks, but that's something that you will often be doing as somebody who plays the game, you know, moderately a lot. You know, like if you play the game a moderate amount, you're going to be hitting those skill checks. So, yeah.
Decide to go all in on gen rushing, it makes matches pretty much impossible to win or really even play as killer. So statistics or not, that's something that needs addressed. Alright, so there you have the current Survivor meta perks and how I would adjust them to try and make the game more healthy. Like I said before, I will be going over the killer meta perks as well to try to find solutions to the current gen kick cringe meta we have at the moment. Of course, let me know your thoughts and feedback in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching and have a good one.
Okay. Elephant in the room. Elephant in the room. What happened with the... Like, a lot of that... You know, a lot of that was a good idea, right? What happened with the windows? What happened with the windows? Hello? Why did you have that take on Windows Opportunity? Windows just telling his brain... Yeah, that... Like, I liked a lot of those ideas. The Windows thing just... Did he have a bad day? Did he have a bad day where he had, like, he did, like, a killer stream and he had, like, nothing but Windows players and he just, like, internalized that? Like, what happened there? Looks like free. Oh, I see. That is a good point, Eminence. Like, he is very much, like, the reason Choy, like, got popular to begin with, well, not maybe the only reason, but, like, one of the things that brought him to prominence was, like, kind of, like, breaking a lot of stuff about, like, how, you know, hackers work, why they hack, where they, you know, where they get their hacks from. Like, a lot of the things we know about hacking comes from, like, Choi's connections to, and videos he's made about, like, the hacking situation in DBD. So I guess there could be some sort of, like, weird, like, response happening there of, like, that looks like hacks. I hate that. You know? Windows kicked his dog one day. Like, I feel like every Dead by Daylight creator hates something that's not really that bad and it's part of the brand. I mean, I don't like Starstruck. That's like mine. Like, I don't like Starstruck very much. I hate Starstruck. I don't even run into it that much. I just, whenever I have to deal with that perk, it makes me sad. But, like, I'm not, like, out here, like, we should nerf Starstruck, though. You know, I think that's the difference. I'm not out here, like, you know, pushing that I hate, that, like, Starstruck should be changed objectively because I hate something, right? You know? I'm not trying to make objective changes to the game based on my subjective opinions. Weird. Yep, Data, thanks so much for the follow, friend. I very much appreciate that. Thank you. That's very, very kind of you. I appreciate that. Hopefully you're doing well. I don't know. That's just... Yeah, like I said, I like most of that. I can't really agree. Can't really agree with the, Can't really agree with the Windows pick, so... And then, yeah, like you guys said, he's sticking to that one, too. Like, he has stuck to his guns on that one. That's wild. That's wild. That's really, really wild.